Good afternoon, everybody. Andy Hazelton here. We're going to talk about this area in the Northwest Caribbean that's kind of been looked at for several days now and starting to come together a little bit, given a high chance of development over the next 7 days by the National Hurricane Center. So before we get into it, again, I just wanted to provide the disclaimer that this is just something I do kind of based on my own thoughts. This doesn't officially represent NOAA or University of Miami, but look forward to chatting with you guys. So again, this area in the North Caribbean, we'll start look at the satellite. This is over the entire area near Central America. You can see with that Central American gyre that we talked about, we have a lot of widespread deep convection in this area. A couple areas to focus on. This is one near Mexico, or south of Mexico, that is close to, if not already, very close to becoming a tropical cyclone. It looks like it'll be, in the gyre moving up toward Mexico or Guatemala over the next couple days. And then over the Atlantic, we have, or the Caribbean side, we have an area starting to take shape near Nicaragua and Honduras in the Northwest Caribbean. And if you remember a couple days ago, that's one of the things we were not sure about, is when and where something would try to focus. That may be starting to happen now, so the forecast may be coming a little bit more into view now. So if we zoom in on that area and animate it, you can see we have deep convection, deep thunderstorms bubbling up, kind of have a little bit of mid-level spin down here near Nicaragua. We'll see that in a minute. Some of the deeper thunderstorm activity here, and this is going to lift off into the Northwest Caribbean over the next day or two, and potentially start to organize a little bit. But we'll hopefully get a better idea of where, exactly how strong this might be at landfall, basically, once we see that now this piece and how organized it can get. So at least we have something to focus on now, rather than just this broad area kind of focus system to look at and sort of make our determination on what it might do. But there's still some forecast uncertainty that we'll talk about later as well. So if we look at the upper level winds, again, we have this upper level divergence here with air spreading out aloft. So that's favoring all this rising motion, deep convection, and lowering pressures in the area. We look at vorticity and spin. Basically here, we have this low to mid-level spin near Nicaragua. Again, that's going to be lifting north. We have our Pacific area off to the west here. So again, we're starting to kind of see what the system of focus is, and we'll have to be able to see how that evolves in the coming days. One thing to keep in mind with any system moving into the Northwest Caribbean Gulf is that things are very warm right now, running 1 to 2 Celsius above average. If we go look at what the actual SSTs are, this is Brian McNulty's really handy page. You can see, especially in the southern Gulf, we have 30, 31 Celsius. The shelf is maybe a little bit cooler than, it's earlier in the year. It's cooled off just a little bit, but still 29, 30 Celsius, plenty to support a very strong hurricane if the atmospheric conditions permit. And if you look at the ocean heat content, which is a measure of sort of the integrated depth of the heat and how deep the heat goes, you can see we have this Northwest Caribbean is extremely warm and deep. And they also have this so-called loop current in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And so this is going to be really important because this could be something where if a storm comes up over this, it could actually favor more intensification. So we'll have to see exactly where the track is relative to that, and we'll look at that in a minute. So we look at the forecast from the GFS. So we'll start at 0 hours. You can see there's, again, that area down here to the south near Nicaragua that's sort of picking up on that, trying to focus by tomorrow morning. And then as it lifts off into the Northwest Caribbean, it really takes off as it gets near the Yucatan Channel and intensifies pretty quickly in the Gulf. So that would be obviously a really bad scenario, sort of a high-end scenario. We have some other ones like the Canadian model that are a little bit more maybe muted. It's getting organized, maybe a tropical storm by Wednesday in the southern Gulf, and then sort of moving up into the Big Bend or Panhandle as a strong tropical storm or Category 1, but nothing quite as intense as what the GFS has. And then on the ECMWF, kind of a similar idea to what the Canadian had, getting its act together near the Yucatan and then intensifying a little bit, but not as quickly, and moving up into the Big Bend. And certainly any of these scenarios are going to have impacts of rain and wind and surge along the west coast of Florida and into the Panhandle of Big Bend, but certainly something like the GFS, which this run shows something of a major hurricane, would be a lot more impactful. And I think both of these scenarios are still on the table until something really gets itself fully together. Well, we're not going to have a great idea which of these is likely, but certainly we're starting to get an idea that we're going to be in this Eastern Gulf, Panhandle, Big Bend area most likely. And just to give another idea of what that might look like, this is another view of the GFS. This is simulated reflectivity. So again, the storm may not be right in this area. It may not look right just like this. It could be a little faster, a little slower, a little east-west. But you get the idea that you have this inner core, where obviously where the strongest winds would be. But then one other thing to note is you're probably going to have these strong rain bands on the east side up over the Florida Peninsula on Wednesday into Thursday. And this is something you almost always get with these Gulf storms. They tend to be east weighted. You have upper level winds forcing the convection on the downshear or east side. So even if the center is offshore, you're going to have a lot of nasty rain and wind and bands with some surge up into Tampa all along the west coast and even inland. So that's something to keep in mind for folks there and spreading out ahead of the storm over the panhandle as well. But just to give an idea that we're still kind of have a large degree of forecast uncertainty. This is the GFS ensemble. So again, slightly different configurations of the same model. This is out to 3 days. You can see we have pretty large spread anywhere from north of the Yucatan to sort of still over the Northwest Caribbean. The mean or the most kind of the focus seems to be just in the Yucatan Channel or tip of the Yucatan. And as we go off in time, you can see that there's a huge spread in speed. We're all kind of focused in the Eastern Gulf here, but there's a big spread in speed. By Thursday morning, some of these members are already up here already easily near the coast. You have some that are still back near Cuba and the Yucatan at this point, and a lot in between. And so this timing is going to be tricky. And if we look at what's going on with that, you can see, I'll pull this up. There's this upper level low here to the north, and what that's going to do is it's going to serve to try to basically pull this system to the north. But exactly where it forms in here and how fast it gets caught up in this flow, that's going to determine a lot about how quickly it moves north, which also how much time it basically gets over that warm water. Euro ensemble, this is the morning run, kind of similar. The most recent one will be out here in about an hour or two. You see the same idea, Eastern Gulf. Some members are very fast over to the north. Some are a little bit slower, and you still have a lot of spread in terms of if this does form a tight eye wall inner core. You still have a lot of possibilities for where that might end up. You could have Panhandle over by Mobile, certainly the Tampa area and points south. Shouldn't let your guard down. And like I said, also one thing just to reemphasize is anytime you have a storm moving up into the Eastern Gulf like this, even if the center stays offshore, you're going to get this southerly flow onshore on the east side, and that can lead to big issues with storm surge and rain and tornadoes and just all sorts of threats on the peninsula and the coast there. So even if the center does stay offshore of your area, don't let your guard down. And there's still, like I said, we're starting to narrow in a little bit, but we still have, pretty much the whole Florida coast, even into, kind of western Panhandle, Alabama region and the Mississippi area that, if things shift a little bit here or there, could see some impacts. So looking pretty likely to be a Florida storm, but and certainly, still not quite clear where in the state would we see the most impacts or what those would look like. So I definitely think if you're anywhere along the Florida West Coast or Panhandle Coast, Big Bend, or inland region there, today would be a good day to finalize, or at least start finalizing your hurricane plan and starting to make some initial preparations in terms of maybe getting gas or just getting supplies to beat the rush, things like that. Because certainly, if this does come together quickly and we start to get, forecasts that look a little bit scary, you'll get a little bit more of a panic and a rush. So hopefully that won't happen, but just to avoid it and kind of hope for the best, be good to start preparing today. So we'll check back in later. Hope everyone stays safe and have a great Sunday afternoon.